Okay, truth number 10. The root of sexual addiction probably isn't what you think it is. In the first segment, I mentioned that the home I was raised in was dysfunctional. The definition of that word is simply that something doesn't operate as it should. Most of the problem was that my father was extremely self-centered and simply lacked the capacity to love others. I suppose it was that lack of love in our home that helped create the cavernous void in my heart. And I did the same thing countless others have done. I tried to fill that void with the things of this world. Of course, a healthy home is built upon the solid foundation of affection and discipline, two aspects of love that were sorely lacking in my home. My dad's lack of affection caused a breach in our relationship, which he tried to make up for by buying me things. And rather than disciplining me in a consistent and predictable manner, he would ignore my rebellious attitude until he got irritated. Then he would lash out in ugly anger. I sought solace in things, and it didn't take me long to figure out how to avoid his temper and how to manipulate him into buying me what I wanted. As a child, I lusted for the latest toys that were coming out. But as I reached my teen years, the main focus of my striving transitioned from possessions to experiences, meaning drugs, excitement, and sex. What I didn't realize at the time was that this demand that I get everything I wanted was causing me to become increasingly selfish and self-centered. Eventually, sexual sin became the great passion of my life. The daily fare of softcore porn and masturbation kept me locked in a prison of self where no one else could intrude. My natural knack for seducing girls allowed me to selfishly use them and dump them when I was done with them. But it was my discovery of hardcore pornography that sent me into such obsessive behavior that I came to the place of bordering on the edge of insanity. It was self-centeredness that led me into sexual addiction in the first place, and pursuing the sin only exacerbated my selfishness. While sexual sin was the primary focus of my attention, there were other aspects to life as well. But whatever I did in life, it was always done with a me-first attitude. I went after whatever I wanted with little regard to how it might affect other people. I wanted what I wanted, when I wanted it, and if anyone stood in my way, I became irritated or even angry. Interestingly, the more I got what I desired and the more things went the way I wanted them to go, the more miserable I became. The more I gave the beast of self what it demanded, the greater it became within me. My life eventually came to the point where it was one black mass of self. There was no room for anyone else. Self demanded and received nearly everything it wanted. C.S. Lewis once said that we must picture hell as a state where everyone is perpetually concerned about his own dignity and advancement, where everyone has a grievance, and where everyone lives the deadly, serious passions of envy, self-importance, and resentment. And the selfishness that statement depicts pretty much sums up the hell that my life became. The great lie of sin is that it offers happiness and fulfillment. The truth is that the more sin is indulged, the more misery one can expect to follow in its wake. In some inexplicable way, sin enlarges the self-life. And the greater the self-life, the more sin is desired. This whole process is a cruel hoax concocted by the devil himself. Well, I eventually became a Christian, but unfortunately I brought this same me-first mindset into the church with me. It took me quite a while before I came to understand that God's kingdom is built in selflessness, not selfishness. It is founded on humility, not pride. Roy Hession said, "It is so often self who tries to live the Christian life. It is always self who gets irritable and envious and resentful and critical and worried. It is self who is hard and unyielding in its attitude to others. It is self who is shy and self-conscious and reserved. No wonder we need breaking. As long as self is in control, God can do little with us. People imagine that dying to self makes one miserable, but it is just the opposite. It is the refusal to die to self that makes one miserable. The more we know of death with Him, the more we shall know of His life in us, and so the more of real peace and joy. Yeah, he really nailed it. The Christian only comes into the blessings of God as he allows the Lord to break him of his self-life. One day I got to thinking about how true the Beatitudes are, but also how the reverse of each Beatitude is equally true. I'll go through them and I think you'll get what I'm talking about. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." And I would add, "Miserable are those who are full of themselves." Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn." And I would add, "Miserable are those who strive after temporal happiness." Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek." And I would add, "Miserable are the self-willed who always want their way." Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness." And I would add, "Miserable are those who are indifferent and apathetic to the things of God." Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful." And I would add, "Miserable are the self-centered who never reach out to meet the needs of others." Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart." And I would add, "Miserable are those whose hearts are full of idols." Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And I would add, "Miserable are those troublemakers who cause division." You see, the world and our carnal natures lead us to believe that the more we insist on having our way in life, the happier we'll be. And they want us to think that the more possessions we acquire and the more pleasure we experience, the more satisfied we'll be. But God teaches us another way. The more we love and obey God, the deeper our joy will be. And the more we give ourselves away for the sake of others, the more fulfilled we will feel. Attempting to combine a self-centered existence with Christianity simply doesn't work. And those who insist on trying to make it work are only deceiving themselves. This was one of the great lessons I desperately needed to learn in life. And it was as I started to overcome the tyranny of self that I began to find true freedom at last. My days of pursuing pleasure and insisting on having my way about everything are over. But you know what? So are those days of misery that were always a part of that selfish lifestyle.